Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, man. Everybody I know has COVID.
A lot of people I know have COVID, but thankfully they're vaccinated and many of them are completely asymptomatic.
That's good. Many I know who are vaccinated and boosted. They're not asymptomatic, but they have just kind of 2 days of misery and then they get past it.
I mean, I have 2 days of misery most weeks, so.
At least that's a good week. 2 days of misery. Fantastic. But of course, Ryan, it's never miserable to get on the podcast, talk to you where, you know, we take a moment away from our day jobs, away from the families, the stressors of life. And we just talk about the wonderful gift of travel.
I look forward to it every 2 weeks, Kiernan.
How you doing on those resolutions that we shared? You making some good headway?
I'm making some progress. I think that I'm going to be able to nail all three of those resolutions and impress folks this year with my travel abilities.
Excellent. Well, one thing that you might consider doing in the new year, this wasn't officially in your resolution list, but this is going on a trip where one of the main objectives is to go see wildlife. I know you mentioned that a national park might be in your future. Maybe you want to look into what is the most exciting wildlife that you can find on your trip. Are you still thinking West Virginia?
I'm still thinking West Virginia, yeah. Yeah, are there a lot of wildlife there? I bet. I don't know.
I think there's moonshiners. That's a type of wildlife you might consider.
I would love to find some moonshiners. I'll be looking for moonshine one way or the other.
No, this is it's a topic. Believe it or not, this dates back to when we first conceived of the show. You and I you may remember. I don't think
we sat on a deck and we brainstormed ideas.
I don't think we've ever fully told the origin story of the podcast. But you and I, we were in New York. We were in Brooklyn Heights. We had access to this beautiful deck that overlooked the Manhattan skyline. We had booze in our hands. We had the Statue of Liberty to one side, and we were dreaming of what could it be to bring our points of view out into the world. Surely this would unlock the riches that we knew were well deserved. Right? You remember this?
Minus the richest part. Yeah, the rest of it.
Not everything came to be, but 3 years later, we're still on the air.
Yeah.
And I created this list of everything that we dreamed of talking about, guests' ideas and countries and city guides and funny topics about, remember a few years ago we did our, where we each created our dream piece of luggage and we argued about all the different pieces and bits. These came from this one magical night. And it occurred to me, I haven't revisited that list in a while because when we're doing our content calendars, often we're looking at, what are the latest, most interesting articles and books going on? What trips have you taken? Have I taken? And one thing that was on there that is very close to my heart was this traveling for wildlife. And what's the way to do it safely? What's the way to not get disappointed? And what's the way to be respectful for nature? We love nature on the podcast. So that's what we're going to tackle today. I've got 4 key tips that I'm calling rules. You know me, I like a rule.
Oh gosh, you love rules.
And these are the rules for traveling for wildlife.
All right. Well, I am, as somebody who has seen less wildlife than you, I'm excited to learn.
Well, I think then it's time that we, you can't see much wildlife in the air, but it's time to take off.
Hey, cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right, Ryan. So now, as you mentioned, I've seen my fair amount of wildlife. I've spent a lot of times in American national parks. I've spent lots of time in national parks overseas. I've spent time in the Amazon rainforest. And so many of these had a wildlife component. It's something that I was just desperately interested in seeing. And that was really on that kind of, I want to check this box list. Have you ever had a nature trip that seeing some animal was part of it?
I don't think I've ever seen like a rare animal. Like, I see like deers and foxes and things like that. But I've never seen outside of like a zoo like a bear in real life.
How about whale? Have you ever seen a whale watch?
I've never seen a whale.
You've never gone on a whale watch?
No. I mean, I grew up on the Eastern Shore. I've seen a lot of crawfish, but that's different.
No, listen, we're going to keep adding to the Boston bucket list. We've got to do next time you come up. We're going to go to the Kennedy Presidential Library, that we'll grab a lobster roll, then we'll go out on a whale watch.
Are you writing the book right now?
That's a reference to the fact that one of my resolutions was to write Secret Boston, which is a guide to secret places in Boston, published by a former guest of ours, Thomas Jonglei. So I have here today that I want to share 4 different rules about the best ways to travel for wildlife. And the first one is actually not a logistical rule, but it's a recommendation for how to not be disappointed in your trips. And this, Ryan, is to say, you should keep your expectations low. In fact, my recommendation in full would be don't set your heart on seeing these animals because you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Usually when you're traveling to a place where wildlife thrives, you're going to get beautiful scenery, you're going to get some great athletic activity. And if you pin all your hopes and dreams on seeing a bear, on seeing a moose, on spotting a whale, on this one sort of elusive feline, you're setting yourself up to be disappointed. And trust me, I'm a box checker. I understand that is a hard thing to hold yourself to, but it really is best to enjoy the trip as a whole. And if you get to see an extraordinary animal, all the better.
Getting disappointed by not seeing a whale is like a literary trope.
That's a good point. Absolutely. Yeah. And, this was really driven home to me when my wife and I went to Alaska with her family. We were going to Denali National Park. And Denali has wolves, it has bears, and very often you do get a sighting of one or both of these. And I had never seen a bear. I was in my 30s and I just thought, gosh darn it. I'm a huge Theodore Roosevelt fan. How can I call myself a man? I've never seen a bear, for God's sake.
Never wrestled a bear.
I've never done anything to a bear. And not something that you could say, Ryan, right? I know the gay scene.
I can safely say I've never done anything with a bear.
Fair point. I know you're more of an otter man.
Exactly.
And when you visit Denali National Park, one of the main things you do is you take this very long bus ride in, and then you take this long bus ride out, and there's just a single road that cuts through all this great wilderness. And you pray that you're going to see Denali, but you're also praying that you're going to see some of this wildlife. And I could feel the anxiety of Catherine next to me. And I said to her, "Why? What? I can tell you're wound up. We're in Denali National Park. What's wrong?" And she said, "I know that you have your heart set on seeing a bear. And I just don't know. Are you going to be so disappointed in this trip if it doesn't happen?" And the truth is, I in my heart of hearts, I knew that she was right, that I really did want to see a bear. Now I went out of my way to put it out of my mind, to put myself in the moment, to enjoy the company, to enjoy the natural beauty. And as it happens, we saw a number of bears on this trip. So I was able to fulfill it. We also saw Denali, which you don't always get to see. It's often covered by clouds. And so a wonderful trip, but I had kept my expectations low, and then the trip far exceeded them.
I'm curious about what you saw.
Well, I saw a bear. I just said that.
One bear?
Oh God, how many bears? No, I think we probably saw 5 or 6 bears.
Oh, that's a lot of bears.
Yeah, I think we saw about 5 or 6 bears, and
like a family,
we saw some cubs. I mean, they might have been friends, a chosen family, maybe. I'm not quite sure.
One liked the porridge too hot, one liked it too cold, and one thought it was just right.
Sure, absolutely. And I had my Goldilocks flowing out the bus window. And, similarly, I applied this keep this expectations low on other trips that I've taken. For example, when Catherine and I went to Rocky Mountain National Park, I very much wanted to see a moose. And I didn't, we did great hikes and had fully committed to keeping our eyes out for a moose, but I hadn't seen one. And then we were so lucky. We were there right at the tail end of winter. And they opened up this roadway that had been closed throughout most of our stay. And we got in the car, we zipped through it. And what do you know, when we came down into an open area with a lake in place and a bunch of mist around it, there was a moose checking out the lake. Clearly humans hadn't been by much because the road had been closed. And so I was able to check that box. But I don't want to make it sound like I'm always successful. When Catherine and I went to Peru, we went on a boat from the eco lodge we were staying at. And we were with a guide who said, we have a very good chance of seeing a jaguar. And, these guides, they can be overly optimistic and they know where to look. And we spent hours and hours with our eyes just glued to the shore and all these places where they told us that a jaguar might be resting. And we didn't see a jaguar. But you know what? Saw lots of great other things. Saw capybaras. I love a capybara. They're rodents. They're just all around down there. But to me, they're exotic. And it was excited to see those too.
I can show you some rodents if you want to come visit Brooklyn. We've got some serious rodents out here.
I mean, another one for keeping expectations low is that maybe you're not going to see the animal itself, but you're going to hear or see evidence of the animal. And maybe that can be something that fulfills your expectations just as much. So a good example here is when I was in Guatemala, I visited Tikal National Park, which has a lot of monkeys and lots of wildlife in the jungle surrounding these great ancient ruins there. And I never got to see a howler monkey because howler monkeys tend not to come towards the tourist areas, the hiker areas. But I could certainly hear them. There's a reason they're called howler monkeys. And so I took my iPhone out. I made a nice recording of a howler monkey, which, by the way, if you've never heard it, I think that's a better experience than seeing them even. So
I can imagine some guide like standing behind a tree holding an iPhone playing a recording of a monkey that you're recording on your iPhone.
That's funny. That's very funny. Well, I like to believe that, trust me, it was loud enough and there was enough of them at 4 a.m. that there are real howler monkeys, or those people are a bunch of dicks with their loud iPhones at 4 a.m. So,
that's even funnier to imagine.
Is you set those expectations low and then you welcome and you're grateful and you have a happy surprise if indeed you get to see the wildlife itself or just evidence of it.
Evidence of wildlife.
I know you're probably thinking, well, what am I going to be thrilled if I see some bear shit?
Yeah, look at that elephant poop.
You take in the right attitude. I mean, an elephant's poop has to be pretty interesting. There's scientists that devote their life to elephant poop.
That's true. That's true.
Read up about it. Get excited about the elephant poop. And then if you get to the elephant, great. All the better.
I love it.
Now, while you're going to set those expectations low, I also want to encourage you to, still hope. You can, of course, hope, but not be disappointed. And so rule 2 is that to maximize the likelihood that you're going to see the animals, hire an expert. There's only so much when you're unfamiliar with the terrain and you haven't studied these animals your whole life. You don't know their habits. But in fact, animals can be quite predictable. They develop routines in this area, and local people and rangers and people who work in the hospitality industry or who run guiding companies for their life, these folks will help you increase your likelihood that you will see those animals. So for sure, I think there are almost every wild place you go, you can find a knowledgeable birder to take you out on a bird walk. Might require some early mornings, but it is thrilling to be with somebody who is an expert. And I'm not a birder in any way, shape, or form, but I have taken hikes with them where they've been so compelling in telling me about these birds that I've started a little list that becomes a keepsake afterwards of, these are the 30 birds that I either saw or heard the calls of, and that I learned about their migration patterns. So if you yourself are not an expert, go find an expert.
It's funny. I have been thinking more and more that in my 50s, I'm going to get really into bird watching. I can just feel it coming. Like I see a bird, I turn my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey. And then I'm like, wait a minute. But I can see.
I'm totally with you. I do feel it coming. And in fact, got a bird feeder for Christmas. So I'm being pushed in that direction.
Oh, bird feeders are so much fun.
Yeah, see, Ryan, man, no, 50, that's the birthday that's coming up for you, right? That's why you're going to South America?
I got another decade before I get into my serious birding times.
All right, so 50s, that's when I need to get you the binocs.
Exactly. And that little like jacket they wear. And that little,
the vest?
Yeah, that little
many-pocketed vest?
Yeah, I want one of those. To hold all my birding equipment.
I think you'd look good in that. And you know what? In Manhattan, you would make quite a fashion statement if you started wearing that around.
That's absolutely true.
I could see that coming back in. Coming back in? Was it ever in? I could see that happening.
Teddy Roosevelt kind of wore one around, right?
No. When he was in the city, he was a buttoned-up professional. This guy was in tuxes and suits, baby.
Oh.
And it's not just bird watchers, though a bird expert is a pretty common thing to be able to Google and find a good one. But I had the experience when Catherine and I went to the Everglades. We only had like 2 or 3 days. It was a very tight schedule. And so what we did was we said we really want to get out into the Everglades, and it's not really a place that you can hike there a bit, but really it's hard. Most of the life is out in the water and in wet areas. And we didn't want to do one of those fan boats because that's very disruptive to the environment. But we really wanted to get out there. So what we did was we took a kayak tour. And this kayak tour was specific that you go out in the late afternoon and then you come back in the evening. And so you are more likely to see wildlife because wildlife tends to be much more active very early in the morning or quite late at night. And one of the most memorable travel experiences I've ever had was you put on a headlamp, you put on a glow stick on your kayak, and you're paddling through the Everglades, and you look to your left and your right into the reeds. And what do you see but these little red glowing orbs? And what's the guide tell you those are? Alligator eyes looking back at you.
That's spooky.
Spooky. And also, you would never have the bravery, nor should you, to go do that on your own, but you're with a knowledgeable tour guide. He assures you, these alligators have very little interest in you. And sure enough, we were relatively close to some of them, but you've got the firm hand of an expert there. So that's where this rule comes from.
That is a good rule.
And Ryan, the final plug, and this very much relates to one of your to your West Virginia trip that's upcoming, is national parks almost without fail have guided ranger tours, and they can be a little hokey, but they are also run by experts, and so they are people who are free of charge to you. When you get to a national park, go to the information center and ask if there's any ranger-led activities, and you could get one of these experts showing you animals just as due course. I remember when Catherine and I were in Glacier National Park, we did a ranger guided tour, and he pointed out to us these gashes that were very high up in a tree. And he said, can anybody tell me where those gashes are from? No idea. Nobody in the group knew. He said, that's from a porcupine slashing at the bark of this tree. I didn't know porcupines climb way up trees and slash. And this, again, I didn't get to see a porcupine, but I got to see evidence of one. And I had an expert there teaching me all about it.
I am so into tours and cities and historical buildings, but I've never asked for a ranger at a park. That's a really interesting tip, Kiernan.
Oh, it's a must. It's an absolute must. And they're full-time jobs, and it's your tax dollars, Ryan. This is what you're paying them for.
I love it. When I go to West Virginia, I'm getting that ranger tour.
Absolutely.
I'm going to see that bear.
Put them to work. Now, Ryan, for rule 3 of taking a trip built around wildlife, trying to see wildlife, is really, really encourage you to keep a list. I mentioned that on some of these birder-led tours, I started to keep a list, even though I myself am not a bird-watching person. But from time to time, I do take out the list, and it really, it has all these names that I've never heard of before of birds that I was unfamiliar with. Here, I'm going to pull it up right now, and we'll be transported to the Amazon. The yellow-bottomed kakake, the golden-collared toucanet, the short-beaked toucan, the yellow tangier, the white heron, the black and white hawk, a swallow, an egret, a vulture, a mongo, an Orinoco geese. Oh, it's probably an Orinoco goose, but I guess we saw multiples of it. the great ibis, a blue and yellow macaw, a red and green macaw, a scarlet macaw, and on and on and on.
Are there really this many birds, or are they just kind of putting on different outfits?
Well, I didn't see all of them, but he assured me they were up there. No, I believe this was an expert birder, and I look at them, and there are some that the lineated woodpecker, I remember. That one sticks in my mind. And also, there's just a certain melodious quality to these names. The tinamous.
I like that. The tinamous. This is how Disney finds out all their new characters. What are the most fun names of the birds?
And Ryan, not just that, one thing that I've discovered in researching this episode is many of the national parks in the U.S. will put a wildlife list up on their website. So I'll throw one up in the show notes. This is a mammal checklist that's provided by Glacier National Park. And so they cover off a lot of the bases here of, you might see an American beaver, you might see a northern raccoon, but you also have a chance that you might see a bobcat, you might see a lynx, you might see a mountain lion. So things that weren't even on your mind as possibilities. Those that I just listed are very rare to see, but you never know. You might be the lucky one.
I'm feeling lucky in my West Virginia trip, so I'm going to print this out and I'm going to check off all the various mammals and birds that I see on the trip.
Well, and I think too, even if you don't get to see them, knowing that they're out there, that's kind of part of the glory of being out in nature, is just realizing how much is all around you.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
One thing that I've never done, by the way, this goes back to maybe one of the expert guided ones, is would love to do an insect tour.
An insect tour?
Yeah, I feel like that must be out there. If anybody knows of a good insect tour, please write us outofofficepod@gmail.com. Ryan, one of my resolutions is get that inbox a little fuller from all our listeners out there.
The Bronx Zoo has this like big insect room that's sort of creepy.
Maybe I could start there.
Yeah, you could at least see some of them there. The sad in their little cages. I don't know that insects get that sad, but
actually, you know what happened when I was in Peru is one of the guides there knew about a tarantula hole in the Amazon, and he just picked up this like a stiff piece of grass or a stick that he had nearby. It was sturdy, and he poked it into the hole at night, and we all had our headlamps on, and sure enough, he got the tarantula to tighten up on the stick, and he was able to pull it out of the hole. And it was like one of these, fist-sized tarantulas.
That's crazy.
It was amazing. So you can bet your bottom dollar that I put that on my list. And then at the end of your life and in your post-travel days, God, just even saying that got caught in my throat. Should there ever be post-travel days, you've got this handy little souvenir reminding you of all the wonderful things you've seen.
I think that's a lovely idea.
And Ryan, the final rule that I have for traveling for wildlife, and I mean this seriously, you and I, we can be silly and we can joke, but this one is very serious and it's very important, particularly when you're in a protected area, is that you need to be respectful and give distance to the wildlife that you're trying to see. So even if you desperately want that selfie, fight the instinct. Being near wild animals is something that you're lucky to be able to do, you're honored to be able to do, but they are wild animals. They can be dangerous to you, or they can become overly familiar with humans, and that has bad consequences too. So keep your distance. Many of the national parks have different rules for how far away you are meant to be. So for many parks, the minimum distance is 25 yards, but then you have other parks like Olympic National Park, the minimum distance is 50 yards. So you should always ask, and you should always honor that no matter what. Bring binoculars, bring a great zoom lens for your camera, experience it that way. But I'm sorry to say, a selfie with that bison should not ever be on your list.
And every year you read about people who get too close and it doesn't end well. So that's good advice.
Actually, just this year, a woman was convicted of approaching a grizzly bear and her 3 cubs. She went within 100 yards and she was found guilty. And, she was sentenced to 4 days in custody, a year of probation, $1,000 fine, community service, and she's banned from the park.
You do not want to get in between a mama bear and her cubs. That seems like a risky place to be.
You're right. She actually got lucky that this was all that she got.
Do not ask the bear this seat taken. It's just not appropriate.
No, that seat is always taken by her cub or die. So, Ryan, that's the 4 rules I've got for traveling to see wildlife. First, keep those expectations low. And then if you're lucky enough to behold a wild animal, great. But you can experience the company, the nature, regardless. Rule 2, hire an expert to maximize the likelihood of seeing animals. It's worth that $100 investment in getting a tour guide for a few hours because you're more likely to see great things when you know what you're looking at. Rule 3, keep a list. This becomes a great souvenir, something you can reflect on, something that you can bring to your friends when they're going out to a national park or they're going to go visit a country. Say, hey, you know what? I actually saw a mountain goat when I was there. And let me look back, show you the other things that I saw. And then finally, as this is the case with all wildlife, be respectful and keep a distance, particularly if you're in a protected area where they have rules around how close you're going to be. Make sure that you're following those rules, your family's following those rules. And if you see people not following them, you should report them because it's important for the conservation of those parks.
Yeah, and if there are no rules, the animals don't know that. So stay away from them still.
Absolutely. All right, Ryan, with that, I think it's time for the last stop.
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan. Well, we're here in the last stop. This is the final segment of the show. It's your favorite segment. It's my favorite segment. It's popularly known as the People segment. It's where we each bring one thing to share with one another, but also with the listening audience. And it can really, by definition, be almost anything. But it does have to tie back to travel. It has to inspire the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So, Ryan, I have to ask you, as I ask you every episode, did you bring a last stop this week?
I did, Kiernan. I recently got to see an incredibly exciting documentary called The Rescue, which is about the 2018 rescue of the Thai soccer team that got trapped in a cave. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course. Elon Musk famously created a scuba suit and went in and single-handedly brought them all to safety.
Believe it or not, Elon Musk doesn't even factor into the story.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, no. It's a remarkable documentary because they have so much footage of the actual rescue that lasted days and days and days. Was incredibly dangerous, both for the divers who had to go into this very deep cave that was large and not really safe to dive in, and take these kids out of the cave. And it's a phenomenal story. I know you've done a lot of, I've done a little bit of stuff with caves. You've done quite a bit with caves and caverns, but do you ever gone diving in a cave?
No, far too dangerous for me.
Yeah, it's super dangerous. There are very few people who do it. It's like a rich dude sport. So actually what's fascinating is that the Thai Navy actually doesn't have the expertise, and they have to bring in a bunch of folks who are in their free time are cave divers from around the world who fly in and assist in this rescue mission. So really cool, really inspiring. Made me kind of want to go cave diving, but I know that's probably not what you should get out of it.
Yeah,
but a great story of human survival, and Thailand's a beautiful country, but be careful with those caves.
Okay, and where is it? Is it streaming?
It's a Natural Geographic documentary.
Oh, cool. All right. And there was also a great interview on NPR Fresh Air about that rescue. So we can also link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, fantastic. It is so good to see, there's always so much bad news. So it's great to watch something where, humanity triumphs for a change.
Yes, indeed.
Do you have a last stop this week?
I do. This is a travel book series that I've only dabbled in it, but I've been having a good experience with it, so I thought I'd give it a plug. There is a book. The theme of the book is it's just called Walking Blank. So it's like walking Philadelphia, walking New Orleans, walking Milwaukee, walking Queens, walking Salt Lake City. And a few years ago, somebody gave Catherine and me Walking Boston just as something to have in hand. And it's it's one of those books that like you pick up a couple times a year and leaf through, and you know, you never, lots of times like you don't get to doing those walks, but you think, someday I'm going to get around to that. And Catherine and I have started a tradition that each year during the holiday break, we hand off Charlie to his grandparents, and then we take an afternoon, we go and do one of these walking tours. And it's divided up into neighborhoods, many that you've been in before, but some that you haven't explored before. And really tight little fun walks and descriptions to bring out especially historical oddities in the area. And so we had a great time going around Boston's North End, which is like the historic Italian district. And it brought us some evidence of Revolutionary War history that you would have just walked by. It takes you through graveyards and restaurants and businesses that are still there and thriving. It tells you about businesses that used to be there and how it ties to the history of the area. But it's not like overly pedantic or scholarly, which makes it kind of great for a quick afternoon out. You know, it's not going to be a 3-hour commitment. You can do these walks in 30 minutes an hour. So I'll link to the series. It's created by something called Wilderness Press, and it's the walking series. I don't broadly see them available, but you can find them all online. And especially, it's a good book to have if you live in the place, because you'll get these friendly 35 tours in each book, and you'll find them to be very bite-sized.
Well, if the publisher's listening, the Walking Bushwick Tour, I'm ready to write that. So just reach out.
You're always following in my footsteps, Ryan.
Well, until next time, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
Is seat taken?
Do you think the bears have like little human books so they can see like, ooh, you know, I've seen a New Englander.
Oh, this one's very salty. This one's very stringy.